Friday night, I gave no reaction. Zero. I gave no reaction on Friday. It wasn't until the next day when I slept on it. Because at first I was like, this is an asinine pick. What are you doing? And then I was like, you know what? I slept on it. Now I like it. Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds. He joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And I know, Jeff, you are certainly a guy who's very rational. I don't book you as an irrational guy, so I'm not going to say, well, you're just irrational. But I would say that you're in the camp that thinks this pick does not make sense.
Yeah, I would say that I'm in the camp of it's not that the player doesn't make sense. It's not that the plan for him doesn't make sense. It's their messaging about the pick, and then the pick being that high itself, to me, was a reach. And, to carry it a little further, I think their plan is rooted in more so heavily in analytics and cutting edge than it is straight football decision making. Not that analytics isn't a part of football, but I think you understand what I mean on that. And I believe their whole day two reflected that. I think that the back who only played 2 years of college football but ran a 4.29, so we got to go get him at a position where I've yet to find another NFL person or a scout who thought he was going to go even at 105. I'm talking Davion Taylor. To me, that whole day was, and really the whole draft was about so rooted in analytics and a little bit myopic and one-sided, I think, than it was about, let's get the best football players.
Well, yeah, and the comment that obviously is out there was, can he run? Is he healthy? Does he love to play? That was kind of the messaging. Can he run? Well, obviously, all the receivers they took him for a reason. Why can he run? The linebacker that they took, can he run? Yes. Is he healthy? That doesn't. Everybody's healthy right now. Does he love to play? Guys who are winners, guys that they like. I don't know how you find out does he love to play in this environment, where you couldn't meet these guys. So I thought that was a little bit interesting. But can he run was obviously the theme of the weekend. The question is, when you go back to Hurts, a lot of people just view. I think one problem people are having is they're viewing him as a backup quarterback only, right? And it's like, well, you can't draft a second-round pick and make him a backup quarterback. Well, I don't think the Eagles' intentions are to sit him on the bench for 2 to 3 years and not play him at all. I think they intend to have packages and play him in the 2020 season. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that fans don't realize that, though. I think the Eagles came out and talked about that in the Taysom Hill role, and I think Lamar Jackson's name got thrown around there. I think there's some problems with that theory. One, Taysom Hill ran like a 4.4. Hurts is closer to a 4.6. Taysom Hill returns kicks, punts, special teams, impacts the game in a variety of ways that I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to impact the game. And Lamar Jackson is just such a ridiculous. I don't think that there's even a fair comparison at any level with Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. I don't think there's a fair comparison to Lamar Jackson and almost anybody in the NFL, for that matter. I think that the problem, Mike, is that when you look at what Taysom Hill brings to the Saints, it's a tremendous value, but it's a value that the Saints got as an undrafted rookie free agent, not with the 53rd overall pick. And try to duplicate that with that kind of value really causes some questions when you have. And I know you went through some of the names, and this is probably where I took umbrage because I heard some of your opening monologue where you said, like, oh, yeah, they could have had A.J. Epinesa, right? And he's a rotational piece in the second round with Barnett and whoever. Well, you know what? Jalen Hurts is a rotational piece because that's what he would do for the first and probably second year, just come in for those gadget-type plays. And let's be perfectly clear about one thing, like, he is not the backup quarterback this year. And you're kind of saying, well, now you have a backup who can win games at cheap if Carson Wentz gets hurt. He's not the backup quarterback this year. They're going to still sign a veteran. I can guarantee you that. It would be a miracle if he beat out whoever and was the number 2 quarterback for the Eagles this year, especially if there's not going to be much of any kind of camps or a training camp.
Yeah, well, and I can agree with you on that, too. I'm just saying in terms of, he's a roster spot worth very little money, whereas most of these guys who have been the backup quarterback, they're getting paid $10, $15, $16 million for Nick Foles. Your intention would be, I think the really interesting point is, too, by the way, Taysom Hill just got $21 million. So And to go to your point about they got him as an undrafted rookie free agent, the problem lies in you got that guy as an undrafted rookie free agent. The next guy doesn't get to be an undrafted rookie free agent because that guy had too much value, so now others want him, and that's why you don't find that guy as the undrafted free agent anymore.
Yeah, that's valid. Look. Here's my issue with it, and I have a lot more homework to do to find out about it because I'm not against unconventional thinking, and I'm not against kind of having an identity and saying this is what our identity is. What I need to find out is this. I mean, there are certain organizations that I speak to, and there's arguments in the war room, there's debate, there's rankings, and people go over it. And, of course, you're never going to have everybody all on the same page. But by the end of the day, by the end of your meeting that are a week before the draft, as an organization, and Andy Reid says this all the time, right? You should be pulling in the same direction. You should be everybody, whether they agreed or disagreed, as long as they've all hashed it out and said, this is what we do. We win as an organization, we lose as an organization. If that was the case here, where everybody universally said, yes, this is what we're going to do, this is our franchise, this is what we're about, then I will hold them only accountable in afterwards. I won't prejudge the pick. I'll say, you know what, you took a risk, but you knew what you were doing, and it was all agreed upon from top to bottom. I don't know that was the case here. I have to kind of figure that out and find out a little more. But certainly when I spoke to other teams and other people, there was nobody who thought, A, that Jalen Hurts was even considered a second-round pick. The 4 teams I spoke to, all 4 said day 3 developmental guy. So or bottom of the 3rd round, most likely 4th round guy. That makes 53 a pretty long reach there. And again, I would have to know. I'd have to feel comfortable knowing that this was that the entire organization really felt strongly about from top to bottom. We saw with last year, I don't know if you saw Jeff McClain's story in the Inquirer last week, just about some of the craziness that went on in the war room last year with the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside pick and everything like that. So I'm not confident right now as we talk about it that this was just one of those overwhelming team decisions, you know?
Yeah, that's something that I would like, dig a little deeper. Like, was Doug Peterson, you would probably have to say, hey, Doug, if we bring this guy in, is this a guy you can utilize, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Doug, because of the quarterback, I'm sure Doug was very much on board with this, but, he is but one person. And, I mean, think about all of the homework that they put into Carson Wentz when they decided they wanted a quarterback of the future. I mean, the owner, the coach, the offensive coordinator, all took them out for dinner in North Dakota. They had scouts going to North Dakota during the season to talk to people. I mean, they had a Bible of study work done on Carson Wentz before they were convinced that they were going to pick him second overall. Mm-hmm. And they really touted that. They talked about who he was, his character, his study, his acumen, his work ethic. They knew everything about him, Mike. Now, what we've heard from going to get Jalen Hurts is, well, Press Taylor went to his Senior Bowl, his pro day, and Doug Peterson has Skyped with Lincoln Riley. It's like, on one hand, you're talking about this quarterback development and down the road, and some people are saying he'll replace Carson. Well, if that's the case, I would like to think they did a lot more homework on Jalen Hurts.
Well, I think
the homework I did was he's a developmental guy who's a project, not a guy who's ready to step in and orchestrate an NFL offense.
Well, and that leads me to this, is because, yes, a developmental guy who has been a winner, and I'm sure that they like that aspect of it, and a guy they think they can develop while utilizing. But the whole thought from you, Jeff, I want to get Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, that the Eagles can get out of that Wentz contract after 2022, and that basically he's on the clock now. Prove to us that you deserve those last 2 years of that deal.
Yeah, which is, again, kind of a strange, I'll call it mixed messaging from an organization that has tried to really, ease the burden of Carson Wentz. They hated when that story came out a couple of years ago from Philly Voice that had anonymous scouts saying that. And, I mean, I'm fairly sure whether or not he's behind it, Alshon Jeffrey with the aging and the injuries is probably not going to be on the team. If he gets healthy, they'll try to trade him if they can. That's what I would guess. I just feel like the organization has tried to protect Carson Wentz, to the point where even they didn't bring back Nick Foles when they had the chance. Remember, they were considering using the franchise tag, and they lifted it and didn't let him walk. I mean, the whole city was either Team Foles or Team Wentz, and it was awkward and uncomfortable. And now Carson Wentz has a bad quarter in week 3 against, any team and throws a stick or two, or they lose a game that everybody thought they should have won. It's going to be get Jalen Hurts in there, and that's not an environment I think they wanted to recreate.
Yeah, no, and somebody texted in. We got a couple texts about, is Carson going to have to look over his shoulder, and are the fans going to start clamoring for, the funny part is the fans are ticked that they took Hurts, and now the same fans are saying that Wentz is going to have to look over his shoulder at a guy they don't even want.
Yeah, well, I think it's the fans anticipating the other fans who are going to, because there's a lot of people who have now rationalized this and think it's the great. There are people who didn't like it at first, and then all of a sudden they're like, you find yourself talking yourself into why you should like it and abandoning your gut instinct. And I do think that there's like that contrarian society who just hears all of the negative backlash and thinks, I don't like this pick just because everybody else hates it, and I don't want to be like them. So they're probably worried about the kind of impact it's going to have.
And look, I see that in 2016 they were 7-9, and in the second round, people called them arrogant that they went and took Sidney Jones when you had so many holes, perceived holes, and needs on that team that you took a guy in the second round at 43, I think it was, who you knew wasn't going to play at all. And he didn't play one snap that year, and they won the Super Bowl. So I think a little bit of this is a similar, where they don't have the perceived holes that we think they have, and they felt that they could get a player who they valued higher than other players in a spot that maybe we perceive that guy has to play right now. He's got to have an impact right this minute. And they're saying, no, he doesn't.
No, I hate that argument, though, because, just because they won the Super Bowl that year doesn't mean they never felt the effects of not having that second-round pick work out. And clearly, if they had had a way better cover corner for the last 2 years, they may have gone back to a Super Bowl, won more games. They may not have had to trade draft picks for Darius.
But I think they feel that the reason they were 9-7 last year is more injury-related than that their team is so far off.
Well, I think of the Dallas game, the first Dallas game, and the Minnesota game, and I don't know how you don't think that how many times they got beat over the top in those games. Even with the offense struggling, you can win a 23-17 game every once in a while if you have corners who can stop getting beat over the top. So, you pick your poison, but the bottom line is it's a bad philosophy to say that I don't have to hit on my second-round picks as long as I build my team correctly every other way.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm not saying that you can write off your second-round pick all the time because J.J. Arcega-Whiteside hasn't played very well, and I'm not giving up on him, and that Sidney Jones didn't play well. But I find the irony of, hey, let's draft a corner at 53 because the last time we took a second-round pick, he didn't work out, so let's try to replace him.
No, I think it's just it was an overall team need. They don't have a lot of good cornerbacks other than Darius Slay, who's 29. So when you talk about rebuilding your position, that's what the draft is for, not now. It's for the future. They certainly need if Darius Slay were to get hurt, Avonte Maddox is a nice corner, but he's also 5'9", probably better suited for the slot. Right now he's going to probably start outside. I just think that corner, defensive end, safety especially, they have been screaming on the mountaintops for a young development safety. Now they got one in the fourth round, but, they also got two receivers in the fifth and sixth and seventh rounds?
No, they took one. Hightower was in the fifth, and Watkins was in the sixth. And apparently they wanted to take Watkins in the fifth and ended up getting him in the sixth. He was the second player at the fastest player at the combine.
Right. Now, I don't like the whole, hey, they gave Carson weapons, relax, what they did with the second round, because the hit percentage on guys that low is not very big. So it kind of it puts pressure on the team who have really hit on their low picks. And if you had taken Denzel Mims in the second round, I think you feel a little bit better about the receiving core now instead of having to worry about a fifth and a sixth guy really stepping into a big spot.
I do, and I agree with you that obviously Mims or Jefferson, the kid from Florida, not Jefferson.
Van Jefferson, yeah.
Oh, Van Jefferson, yeah. That those guys are on, were, if you got them at 53, you're feeling like, hey, we got another player who could help us potentially right now. And I guess the sting of having J.J. Arcega-Whiteside not work out for you makes you say, hey, look, if you felt that this player can help us in other ways than just being the backup quarterback, then I'm intrigued to find out how you're going to use this guy.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's fair, and I really don't care if they don't draft a wide receiver there. I thought that at that point in the draft, we always talk about value and the cluster. Safeties, no safeties went in the first round, which means some pretty good safeties fell to the second round. You saw an early run with McKinney go off the board pretty quickly, but those guys and linebackers too.
Yeah, Chin was the guy that Chin was the one guy that went after 53 in the second round.
Yeah, I was more fond of Ashton Davis for what he did, who also went a little bit after. But then there were guys like Logan Wilson, the linebacker that I know the organization really liked. I mean, clearly Jim. If you shoot Jim Schwartz up with first serum, he probably Kenneth Murray in the first round over Rager, right? So their linebacker position did not get upgraded at all, in my opinion. I mean, we have no idea what to expect from the Temple kid. And again, that Davion Taylor kid is all raw developmental.
You're almost surprised. Jeff. You're almost Jeff that the linebacker position is becoming like running back, where you're just taking guys, flyers, undrafted guys, and seeing who can run and who can play for a year or two before you roll out the next. You know what I mean? Like that position has become so devalued by them.
Right, and I'm big on saying and explaining why. You know, I understand why, and I think it's fair. So why they don't put a lot of money into linebacker at free agency, or why they don't put a lot of first-round pick investment into linebacker. But that's why I said if you're not going to do that, if that's your philosophy, you really have to draft well at the position, like a guy like Jordan Hicks, who was a third-rounder, because you know you're not going to pay these guys, and you know you're not going to draft them very high. So you should at least find yourself with some second and third rounders to give yourself a higher position rate. And that's basically what it comes down to. Again, I don't kill the player at all. I love Jalen Hurts as a person, as a comfortable kid. I like the idea of what he can do to the offense. I just don't know how valuable in the end that is going to be with the 53rd overall pick as opposed to who else they could have had. And I also question whether or not they got him later in the draft because, like I said, every team I spoke to, had him as a developmental late third, fourth round quarterback.
Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com at Geoff Mosher NFL. More draft coverage from those guys, along with Adam Kaplan breaking down the draft. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. It is posted. It is up at Geoff Mosher NFL. We'll talk more NFL draft throughout the day, throughout the week. All right, Mosher, I'll talk to you, pal.
All right, brother.
Geoff Mosher here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.